Can you just shift your face slightly? That's it. So we're going to be looking for the skin coloration and the drape next to each other. Is your skin appearing more natural looking next to this color or there? It's not too bad here, but I'm being drawn to all the redness in the face. So it's almost like my eyes are skipping the neck and then just going straight to the face because it's pulling the redness to the surface. Maybe a touch gray, but it's too hard to see. That's the summer one. Okay. Okay. So this is now not as light a color as the pink one was from the Cool set. So it's actually not looking so paling or anything like that. It's actually a fairly relatively good intensity. And it's not doing the redness. So I think maybe this level or this, you know, it's not doing the redness. This one is doing a little bit of a sticky shine or something like that. I'm not sure about the warm set on this level, on this intensity level. So I'm going to get the light summer and the light spring drapes, and I will just hold them up behind you so you can see their differences. But like I explained to you before, they will be lighter colors and clearer colors, so they don't look particularly gray, they don't look particularly, you know, dark or anything like that. They're fairly colorful, but they're as if we added like white to pure pigments, you know, that sort of quality. I put them together, you can see they're both like almost like ice cream colors or something like that, these light season colors. But this is our warmer set, this is our cooler set. So what you can observe is that the warmer set has like slightly more yellowed tones. So like the reds are peachier here, they're a bit more raspberry here, and then here's the greens. This is kind of like, I don't know what, like appleier, and this is a little bit cooler tone. And then same with the blues. This one is a little bit tealier or turquoisier, and this one is a little bit more regular kind of sky blue. So this is our cooler bunch, so the light summer colors, and this is our warmer bunch. And I test with a red, green and blue example from each category because they are kind of like the easiest type of colors for the brain, as an exercise for the brain, because we've got red, green and blue cone receptors in our eyes. So yeah, it's just an easiest, simplest exercise. Colors like whites, yellows, blacks, other things we've got loads of examples of, but they are not as easy as a quick exercise, you know. So it will be always a red, green and blue for everything. So let's begin, shall we? So okay, this takes a little bit of jigging to pick up the drapes. Okay, so that's the peachier, and it's a little bit lighter, of course. You know, this is the spring one, and the behind it is our summer drape. Okay. And this will be basically what we'll be doing for like the next couple of hours, just testing different colors and then trying to learn something from them. Okay, so I'm gonna like hover down kind of like near your level so I can see very similar light reflection angles as you. Okay, so this is the warmer color on the top, and this is basically our blank canvas or starting point. You know, whatever this is reflecting is how we think your face is, until we flip it and then you stay with your face. We're just going to be seeing now, how did the appearance of your face change? And I'm going to flip it a few more times, and then our job is to keep looking at the face each time and then see if we can spot good and bad from both of these sets, basically, because that way we know that we are kind of cancelling our bias, or like we're trying to, you know, not think whether we like this color or whatever. You know, we literally want to be straight looking at your face. Okay, so that's the cooler one. And I flip it a few times to give us the opportunity to look, and then I start talking about the differences that I see. And then please try to find, like with your eye as well, something good and something bad about both, because then we know that we're okay, we're being strict here. Interesting. Okay, so I'll talk you through what I'm seeing here. So the good thing that this drape is doing is that it's actually evening your skin tone a little bit more than the other drape. For example, when I'm going to lift this off, just see what happens to any sort of imperfection on the face. You get a little bit more redness, like around the nose, anywhere where you've got like little bits of redness, dots, whatever. They just get a little bit more kind of pulled into focus. Your skin also sort of gets a little extra sort of shine here, where this one kind of like, it just gets a little bit more like dewier look. But yeah, it evens the skin tone a little bit better, this one. This one gives you a little bit better contrast, but it does gray your skin a little bit and kind of increases the sort of range of colors. Because if you think about, like, if you've paced your eyes from like here to there, to there, to there, just follow your eyes in the different areas of your skin, basically, and then see the evenness, like how easily they flow into each other, and then do it here. It's just kind of like you already have a tinted moisturizer in here, you know, it's sort of blending the skin tone much more evenly here. Plus I feel like it does kind of have an uplifting feeling, this color, in a way, even though it's really, really light. It's just kind of, there's a fresh feel about it. This one has a sort of sterner feel, you know, something a little bit more severe about it, but it does kind of chisel, like it does give you a nice narrow face. And this one, maybe possibly because it's a little bit light, I'm not sure, but it's a little bit rounder face. So like I'm guessing this one is just giving a little bit more definition, but almost too much, because it's at the expense of kind of putting some discoloration basically on the skin. Okay, maybe turn your face slightly at an angle. Yeah, and then just observe like what happens to the color transition and just generally your features. Slightly more under eye circles here, can you see? And then just a bit more redness coming to the surface, like wanting to separate out. Can you see?
Yeah, especially on my cheeks.
Mm-hmm. Whereas here, it's almost like we just applied something, right?
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. All right, so let's see if we're gonna get the a similar kind of experience with the greens. Okay. So on top is the warmer green, so this is the spring green, okay, and then underneath it is the summer one. Okay, and I'll flip it a few times to give us the opportunity to keep seeing how the reflection changes, because basically what happens is that the light hits the drape absorbs some color, reflects some on your face, and then your face absorbs some of that reflected wavelength, and then whatever it leaves is basically what's creating an optical illusion on your face. So what we're aiming here is that we kind of want the colors to be fully absorbed, like fully harmonious with your coloring, so that it absorbs fully and there's no leftover noise to kind of create these optical illusions. Because this is obviously not how your face looks like, you know, with all these kind of accented out, you know, imperfections. It's just an optical illusion, right? Because your face isn't morphing, you know, back and forth each time, you know, it's always an illusion, right? But here we see a lot more redness, can you see, in the face? All of the textures are throwing apart, you know, more shine, sort of like a more stern look just generally. Whereas here we see the skin evening, brightening up, you know, and we're not really concerned here whether this is exactly the light kind of lightness level or brightness level or grayness level, whatever. Their difference is their temperature, and we're looking to see how that's affecting your skin. But this is not yellowing your skin or anything like that, you know, this is actually evening your skin tone, whereas this one is reddening your skin, graying it in some areas, a little bit more under eye circle noticeable here, you know, just kind of dragging the features, whereas this one is kind of allowing them to stay more level. Interesting. Shift your face slightly so we can see it from another angle, because it's just a really nice large surface to look at. But yeah, you can see the redness like really pop up, right? Yeah. And then here also your hair color looks like very bright with this drape, whereas this one here, it just kind of allows it to look a bit more normal looking.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so green in contrast. My hair suddenly looks so green.
Yeah, let me just pull the cap down a little bit more so we see a little bit less.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. This would not be a problem because if your hair was natural, then we could just tie it back and it's not a problem. But because it's got hair dye on it, we don't know if it's you know, whether it's too warm or too cold for you, or too bright or too, you know, grey for you, or something like that. So it's best to kind of leave it out of the equation.
What do you ever do if, like, mine are natural, but what do you do if people have dyed their eyebrows?
Well, I've had this before. It's not easy. I didn't have anybody who dyed their eyebrows, but I had somebody with makeup tattoo. Yeah, that was very difficult. So we probably spent about half an hour at the beginning with a tiny little brush and a concealer, me kind of brushing the hairs down and going with the concealer, like dotting on top of the makeup, you know, the sort of tattoo, until we got it out. But she had it as a rim around the eyes and also the eyebrows, you know. So the eyes was of course easier because we could just kind of dot it around, and we had to be careful not to put too much because we don't want makeup, we want the rest of the face to be kind of responding, you know. We just didn't want that to interfere. But the moment we actually finished putting on the concealer just on those areas, her eye color changed. So her eye color looks sort of like almost like a stormy blue, and suddenly it became a turquoise color, like a tealy turquoise color. I was like, oh my goodness, you've got tealy eyes. And she said, oh yeah. And I was like, I think your makeup is changing your, you know, the tattoo is changing the appearance of your eye color. It was insane.
Wow,
yeah,
just like the subtle differences.
Yeah, and it did turn out to be that it was actually a little bit too cool for her, that makeup tattoo, but you know, it was mostly faded, you know, so you could apply makeup on top, but yeah. So all of that does affect your coloring. Okay, so the last colors on these rings is the blues. So let's repeat the same exercise. 1. Okay. Just tuck it in. Okay, so this is the warmer one on the top, and we're comparing the effects of this to the cooler one underneath. And because this is a lighter color from the cooler set, it's not as severe looking as the others.
It's hard to not be biased because I really like blue.
But every category will have blues, you know, like there's just their kind of blues. But this one is still pulling red to the face, can you see?
Yeah.
More so than this is casting any sort of yellow that would look unnatural. So, you know, it's not like the redness disappears, but it just kind of looks a bit more sitting well in your face, like sitting a little bit more comfortable. Whereas here, we just get drawn to the sort of textures of the face, you know, and then it just pulls it to the surface. Yeah, and it's also kind of like, again, it's not a stark and stern look like with the darker colors, but it still feels a little bit disconnected maybe from you. Like I feel there is just a little better balance between the energy flowing up and down between you and the color here, you know, just there's a little bit a better union going on here. This feels a little bit almost like masculine in a way, or something a little.
I agree.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking the same thing, like.
It's a different look, it's a different you, right? So yeah, every single color will create, that you add to your context, will create an optical illusion. So our job here is to narrow down to the types of intensities and types of temperatures that you absorb so well that it's not going to leave all these kind of weird optical illusions that don't look right, you know? Yeah, okay. So that was the light set. Light summer, light spring. So I'm just going to move on to here, make some notes. So these are the two that we compared, and we thought that the light summer one was a little bit stern at some point, and also a little bit kind of pulling red and throwing textures apart on her face. So we actually preferred the spring one here. So we're going to move on to comparing soft intensity colors. Again, warmer and cooler ones. Soft autumn, soft summer. Okay, soft autumn, soft summer. So very similar kind of thing, but they're not going to be as light now. They're actually more kind of grayed down pigments rather than like whitened down. They're still not full intensity, of course. There's quite a lot of gray in here, but the main difference is that, of course, the summerier ones will feel a little cooler tones, so more terracotta reds in the autumn, a bit more rosy pinks for the reds in the summer, The greens are a lot more yellow here. And then interestingly here, my blue drape in the autumn is actually almost like a slightly more tealy version to this. And this is quite a bit more grey. Okay, let's start with the reds. So, okay. So, that's the warmer one on the top. That's the cooler one. Okay, and this is quite a bit lighter than this one. And we're just observing the differences and seeing what we might be able to find. So very interestingly, you kind of make this pink almost like a very grey kind of colour, you know, you don't make it very fresh looking. You possibly make this drape a little bit more colourful, and maybe you're also a little bit more sort of vibrant looking here. I feel like there's a co-paling going on, you know, you pale each other in a little kind of weird way. It's not giving you so much redness like the light set did, so this cool drape is not actually pulling all that red to the surface, so that's good. You know, that means that either the intensity is better here now, you know, that maybe all that pigment was just like pulling it to the surface. So it's possible that that's the case. So maybe turn your face slightly. Okay. Tiny little bit under eye circle-y, like a little bit, maybe a little bit more like feeling drained maybe, but I'm not noticing any kind of optical illusions that are very severe or bad. If anything, this feels almost dark, you know, like just feels a little kind of starting to get heavy, but it's still even on the skin. Like I'm liking, you know, that it's doing less redness. Yeah, maybe this is, they're doing two opposite things, almost like this is paling a little bit and maybe this is now a little bit too much. So I'm going to move on to the greens and see if maybe they give me a slightly better reading. And sometimes this happens on some levels, you know, where like, ooh, you know, their differences are like either too small or they are too like, you know, maybe one is too pale but the other one is too colorful or something, you know, like maybe they're doing different things, and then now we're trying to reconcile that. So sometimes I just like leave it and then move it into the next color and see. If it becomes very difficult with each color, then of course we're trying to figure out what's going on, you know. Yeah. But sometimes it's just one color pair. Okay, so that's the autumn one. A little bit lighter this color, so it's actually much fresher. That's the summer one. Is it weird looking at your face?
I don't know if I should smile or yeah.
No, anything, like just relax, you know. We're basically just, this is a great exercise for you to just see what happens, like, oh, this reflection, oh, that reflection, and how it morphs your face basically each time.
I never really studied myself in such detail, especially without my hair.
Yeah. Well, the hair can be useful, but yeah, if it's not natural, then it can be also useless, you know. So it's best to keep it out of the equation and later on we'll have a look at that. Okay. Okay. So this is now not as light a color as the pink one was from the cool set, so it's actually not looking so paling or anything like that. It's actually a fairly relatively good intensity, and it's not doing the redness. So I think maybe this level, or this, you know, it's not doing the redness. This one is doing a little bit of a sticky shine or something like that. I'm not sure about the warm set on this level, on this intensity level. It's very possible that they're both off in some way, and then we're trying to reconcile it. Maybe this one gives you a better glow, perhaps, you know, like a sort of slightly more natural glow, but I'm not sure at this point yet, you know, whether this shine is to do just with the lights here, or whether that's like just too much reflection from this color. Okay. Well, between these two, again, they're doing slightly different things. To me, this one is relatively even, and I'm actually not unhappy with it. Oopsie. But I'm lucky. That one is fairly even as well. Maybe it's just the shine that I'm not sure about. Maybe a touch red, like maybe a touch, but that could be just natural pinkness amount, so like I wouldn't want to make too harsh judgments based on that. Yeah, possibly a little bit more luminous here, but there's that trying to reconcile as well. Okay, let me check the blues as well. Between these two, like when it becomes a little bit too difficult when you're doing a comparison to reconcile, I'll leave it and then we'll revisit it later. Basically, when it's hard to see the difference, then either we need to look at more colors or we need to do a different comparison, because right now we're comparing them on their temperature, but maybe it's easier, maybe the exercise becomes easier to see whether either of these is good or not when we're comparing them, you know, similar temperature but maybe a different intensity level or something like that, you know, so maybe we just switch the type of comparison. But for now, this is interesting learning, you know, because in the first set it was so easy to see how much redness the colors were casting. So it will be different. This is why I like repeating them on different intensities, different scenarios, because it just helps with, you know, getting our bearings if there's a pattern to be seen here. Okay, this is the autumn one on the top. So this is slightly warmer. Summer one. Okay. Yeah, this is not bad. Like I'm thinking this is fairly even on the skin, not doing any of that. Here maybe I'm seeing that shine again a little bit, possibly. Can you turn your face slightly to one side? Yes. So I'm just looking to see if this might be graying a little bit or if this might be yellowing, because of course we're comparing them on temperatures. So I'm looking to see, like, is this a better relationship between the drape color and your skin tone? Like, are they more harmonious looking together? Or is this a better relationship? Maybe here I'm seeing a little grayness or something in the neck. Can you see? It's not quite as sort of as a fresh looking skin next to the item. This feels a little cleaner. So my thinking is temperature wise, the autumn one might be better because it is giving us kind of quite a nice glow. I'm not sure if it's the right intensity at this stage. It's very possible that the shine is just from all this extra studio light. Yeah, and maybe this does feel a little drab in your contacts, like you're not making it look as nice as you are doing with this drape. You know, you kind of feel fresh, and so does the drape. Yeah, but this level was actually quite tricky, wasn't it?
Yeah. The first one was a lot easier.
So easy to see. Perhaps maybe when we have a lot of pigment, because their differences is one is a very pigmented category, the other one is a fairly grayed down. So maybe once we tone back the pigment, maybe then the differences become really little. So that could mean that we're in a really good intensity here because the differences get really small, or it could mean that perhaps something that's really pigmented just gives all of that data, you know, that's easy to work from. Yeah, so I'm umming and ahhing with these. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold on to both of these for now. I think because they were so similar and they were doing slightly different things, I just want to look at them a little bit in more detail, or compare them to something else. You know, like I want to compare something like soft autumn to dark autumn, or soft autumn to, you know, light spring, or, you know, just shifting the intensities between the warms, just to see if that gives me a better information than sort of trying to compare it this way. But since pigment was helpful for us, we're going to move on to the bright level. So we're going to compare the cool neutrals and the warm neutrals from the bright intensity next, and see where we get with that. Here we go. So this is the warmer set. This is the cooler set. So the winter colors are also a little bit more dark, or sort of slightly starker feeling, because the whole color space is a bit darker and starker. And yeah, this is kind of fruity and fresh because the springy spaces are very much like that. But overall you can see that it's still kind of warmer poppy or watermelony or green. This is more berry colors again. Back to the sky sort of blue colors and the royal blues here, and even the greens again back to that sort of fruity kind of feeling, you know, whereas here we're back into sort of darker, you know, piney tones, you know. So these look like food colors, you know. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I always think that the spring categories are very like edibles, you know.
Yeah, that these sort of bright colours.
Yeah, reminds me of fresh food. Okay, so here you can see them behind you. So they're similar intensity, they're very pigmented, quite crisp, but of course one is warmer, one is a little bit cooler, so that's what we're looking to see. And hopefully with these having a lot of pigment, it will be easy enough to see. Okay, that's the warm one on top. Okay. Yeah, it is easier to see with the bright colors. Okay. So I'm going to switch to you. Let's see. Let's test you on what you picked up on so far.
Yeah, like this way.
Yeah. So is your skin more even here, or is it more even here?
I think the first one makes it less.
Yeah, it doesn't pull up the red to the surface so much, so that it kind of allows it to blend and flow, the colors flow into each other easier.
Yeah, and then this one brings out all the pink.
Yeah, it separates it out. Exactly, and then it just kind of creates almost like little like areas that just want to like separate out, you know, whereas this one allows it to kind of like smoothly flow all the color tones in your skin. Okay, what else? Let's see, if you shift your face to the side again, let's see if there's a better relationship going on between your skin tone and the drape here, or if this is a better relationship between the skin tone and the drape here. I feel like we're seeing that grayness again here a little bit, can you see?
Yeah.
Whereas here, this feels like a cleaner relationship between the two. Very interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow, you're right about the grey.
Yeah, just next to this color, your skin has a sort of like a greyish tint to it. That's basically something that it's an optical illusion, and it's reflecting a little bit more of that coolness back. Yeah, whereas here it's able to absorb it much nicer. This is, for me, this is an easier one to see. Yeah. And then this one just feels a little bit more tired as well.
Yeah.
Just a bit more redness and circles around the eyes, whereas this one is sort of a little bit more neutral, so that's good. Okay, let's have a look at the green ones. Let's see if we find the same. It's very interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, so these are the two greens. They're actually quite different in darkness level. The winter one is quite a bit darker, but the winter category is quite a lot darker than the spring type of harmonies. So I like to sometimes have a little bit higher contrast with some of the pairings, just so that we can see, you know, like, and the spring is very colorful. So I wanted to see, like, you know, when you're very colorful or when you're really dark, you know, like how does the difference appear on the face? Okay, that's the green one on top, which is the spring drape. That's the winter one, so big difference. Yeah. So I feel like immediately we have quite a lot of redness on the face. So that's like the first thing that I noticed, that the whole face is sort of red, whereas this one feels a lot more natural looking skin tone.
Look healthier without.
That one is red again, just kind of a bit more nervous looking, inflamed looking.
Yeah. Like sicker.
Mm-hmm.
Not as healthy.
Yeah, whereas that one just feels like fresh and open, right? Like it just has the impression that it's just kind of a bit more effortless. Whereas this one just feels a little stuffier, isn't it? Okay, let's check the blues as well. I think that could probably seal the deal, but I feel like we're probably going to see a similar thing. Oops, dropped it. Okay, so this is the spring one on the top. This is the warmer one, but immediately as soon as we put it on, it's a nice sort of like healthy glow. The redness is back immediately, and now that we've gone into a deeper but really stark vivid color, it's not even a very like sort of dark color, you know, still very colorful, but immediately we're seeing that extra redness. Okay. And then if you shift your face slightly, we can then see like the relationship that's forming between the drape color and then your skin tone. And then here, but immediately like we're still being pulled back straight into the center. We can't even look at this area because this is so red, right?
It's so red. Whereas this one, it really does disappear almost.
Right, it's almost like you've put a cooling gel or something on your face, or you know, like a tinted moisturizer or something that's already kind of dealt with the problem mostly, you know.
That's amazing.
Whereas that one is just like, oh, I'm flaming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it just really draws attention to like any areas that like the skin is sort of like dealing with, you know, it will just pull it out, you know, it will separate it out. Whereas here it just kind of calms it all down so that the skin is just basically as it is, you know. Very interesting. Okay, well, yeah, with this, again, this is a more colorful set like the lights were, and it was much easier to see that these when we're pulling, the cool tones were pulling quite a lot of redness to the surface, quite a lot of pulling the colors apart, you know, separation in the areas, lots of texture, whereas these ones were sort of fairly nice and blending, weren't they?
Yeah, they're really nice in contrast.
Okay, so that's the spring ones, that's the winter ones. So okay, so here the winter ones were a bit too reddening and the spring one was our better candidate again. So let's check the dark intensity again. So last time it went more muted, it became harder to see the difference. I'm very curious to see, is that going to repeat again? Or because now we're a little bit darker in the intensity, you know, we're going to see a little bit more pigment on the drapes. I'm wondering, is it actually going to be okay to see? So let's find out, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So, winter bunch here, autumn bunch here. So they're both very dark, as you can see. But their color sets are still slightly different, as you can see here. The autumn one is warmer in the reds, in the greens, and also in the blues. Okay, let's check this. Okay, so this is the warmer one on the top. Okay, so it's less intense than the brighter set, but I think it's still easier to see than what we've seen with the softs. So this is again the more even skin here.
Yeah.
Especially this middle area really reacts here. Can you see? It's just really reddening, and that little bit of graying going on again. Plus you make the color look kind of grayish, not kind of clean in tone, whereas here you allow the color to sort of be clean and fresh looking, and so does it the same to you basically. It's allowing you to be cleaner and fresher in tone. It's a two-way relationship, isn't it?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Because of course you're bouncing the light back and forth between each other, so you're affecting each other in each other's context. Let's check the greens. So is it easier to see than you imagined, the differences, or?
I still think the ones over this side of the spectrum easier to tell the difference, but this is certainly easier than, was it these two that were really hard?
Yeah, Yeah.
It seems a bit easier
Yeah.
to see.
And in general, like before we began the session, did you think it might be difficult to see all these visual differences?
Yeah.
But it's not that difficult, is it?
I think the redness actually, I know you mentioned that
It's
because I
helping.
was worried about all my acne. It's actually really helping me.
Yeah. It's helping to sort of see where it might want to kind of uneven the skin even more and push you into the, to kind of focusing on these things, you know, but that's not where the focus should be, you know. Yeah, exactly. All right, let's carry on this dark level. Yeah, people often worry at the beginning, oh, what if I can't see all the things that you're showing me? And I'm like, we'll deal with it then, but I'm pretty sure that you're going to be able to see a lot of it. Okay, so this is the warmer one on the top. That's the cooler one, but same story all over. We get the redness there, a bit more tired, that draggy kind of face, and then just much brighter and clearer. And you can feel the energy sort of like also dropping downwards here. Whereas it's a little bit more level here, can you see?
Yeah.
Like immediately as soon as I move it, it's just a sort of, you know, we're dropping in the frequency.
Definitely.
Okay, let's check the blues. So we got a tealy color from autumn and sort of like a controller blue or something like that, you know, an office blue.
Yeah, like school uniform vibes.
Basically. Okay. Let's see if you looked good in school uniform or if you would have done better with a colorful uniform.
Yeah, mine was maroon, so.
Oh, okay. That wasn't too bad. Okay, so that's the warmer one on the top. Redness back, isn't it?
Yeah, glad I didn't go to school with that colour.
Okay. Reset. Okay. Yeah.
It's not great.
Okay, cool. So that was still easier to see than the soft set. Yeah, so the soft set was basically the hardest to see. I mean, it's very possible because there was barely any pigment. You know, they are the most grayed down type of colors. It's possible that it just became harder and harder to see, and we were just at the beginning of the exercises, you know, so like our eyes didn't necessarily know where to go and look, you know, they didn't have the quick references of like, oh, I know to look here because it always does that, or I know to look here. Yeah. Yeah, at the beginning, normally the brain just sort of learning the exercise. Okay, so that goes there, that one goes there. So we compared dark autumn and dark winter test drapes, and again we thought that the dark autumn drapes, the slightly warmer ones, were just a bit better and the winter ones were just a little bit more reddening. It was less easy to see. Oh, no, not drawing. Come on. Maybe it ran out. Okay. All right, you just have to imagine that I've got a line here. Across. It was fine there.
Yeah, it was at the start.
Sort of, it was already very faded. Okay, but yes, so with the dark winter colors, we could see the redness coming onto the face with some of the colors more so than with other colors, but here we kind of kept the illumination here, the energy was dropping, we could see a little bit more under our circles. So we've done the 4 neutral sets, so we've got the lights, the brights, the softs and the darks. So what we've got left is basically the medium intensities, which is the true season. So we've got true autumn and true winter, true summer and true spring. So these are our darker medium intensities and these are our slightly lighter ones. So I'm going to be comparing true autumn to true winter because they're both sort of darker but similar in intensity. What you will see is that between these two, they are actually much more separated out in terms of they're not so close in temperature. They're actually further away from each other in temperature. So that's going to be the main difference, that they're going to look similar in intensity, they're medium, but now we're pushing the temperature a little bit further away, and then we're going to repeat the same thing for true summer and true spring. They're actually quite far away in temperature as well, but they are both a medium intensity. So let's start with the winter and the autumn set. Okay, So here is the true autumn, that's the true winter set. And if I pull them together, you can just see that their intensity is very similar, right? Like it could be all one wardrobe and you wouldn't, like it all looks kind of similar. But as soon as I separate the matte, you can just see, wow, these are nice and toasty, really warm toned, mellow colors. And these are actually quite stark, clean, you know, very sharp type of colors. But interestingly, they're not too dark, so they're not as dark as the dark intensity colors that we just looked at. They're a little lighter than that. They're definitely more muted, but they're not as muted or gray as the softs were, and certainly not as bright as the brights were or as light as the lights were. So this is why we call them medium intensity, because they're not in the extremities, but this is our sort of slightly darker medium pair. But as you can see with the reds, much bigger gap, right? Like, you know, that's basically a purple, and we're in a terracotta. That's like a full teal, and now we're in this kind of royal blue, or I don't even know what kind of blue that is. And then with the greens no, these were the blues. Okay, and then with the greens as well, that's our almost like a yellowy green nearly, and we're still in the sort of piney zone. So they're much more further away from each other in terms of temperature, but they're much closer to each other in terms of intensity. Okay, so this will be just an interesting thing to see in terms of temperature. Are the cool ones going to throw a lot more texture, or because if they're not so bright, does it mean if they're a bit more medium intensity, does it mean that it won't bother us as much, you know, all the redness? So we'll find out. This is why the looking is sort of like the fun part, you know, because we won't know what we're going to find, but we're looking and testing, and then like, ooh. Okay, so that's the autumn one on the top. That's the winter one. So it's definitely got the stark look, not as red as sometimes we see it, but still we notice that coming to the surface. Okay, so that's definitely still a little bit more evening. It's got a stern, like you got a stern look in this color, isn't it? It's just like a...
My face line becomes really clear.
Very sort of, but almost in a sort of like over sharpened way, right? Almost like a constipated, like a, ooh, you know, like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Yeah, that's nicer. Can you just shift your face slightly? Yeah, this is also always a good angle to have a look at, isn't it? So a bit more under eye circle, a bit more redness going on here. Yeah, that's definitely more even. And, you know, it's very possible that this isn't perfect, you know, but we're looking to see where are we going to get a little bit closer to where the skin tone is even. You've got a nice radiant glow. But here I feel like we're dropping away from it. We're seeing the greyish kind of skin tone colour again, the redness come, you know, the tiredness pulls in. And that's kind of like stern look, isn't it? Like the strict school teacher, you know, like, oh, don't want to be mad with her. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. So next lot is the greens. And the other way to compare these true seasons would be to compare something like true winter to true summer and true autumn to true spring. You know, that's another way where you just compare, you know, they have the same temperature, but you compare lightness, darkness. So it kind of doesn't matter. As long as you compare everything to everything, eventually you'll eliminate all the worst ones and keep all the better ones. This is the warm one on the top. Okay. That's the cooler one, and just back to that sort of discoloration here, that grey, and can you see like almost like the bluey bits and grey bits sort of coming? It's almost like these really cool tones are starting to like yank up anything that's similar to them to come to the surface of your face. Whereas here, of course, all these veins and everything still exist in your face, but it's just not being sort of separated out, you know, everything is remaining even, so we're not like drawing to them. That sort of stern look as well again, isn't it? Okay, and then with the blues. Yeah, I'm thinking with the medium intensities, the intensity is forgiving, but of course the temperature is not. So let's see what we find here with the blues. And here they're going to be quite different because that one is very, very electric and this one is very, very sort of toasty. But that looks just as a first glance nice and even looking on the skin. No. And you almost have to start like squinting a little bit to look at you, you know. So as soon as we kind of go into the crisp sharpness of the winter, it's also becoming a little kind of piercing. That's definitely a little bit more smooth. Can you just shift your face slightly? That's it. So we're going to be looking for the skin coloration and the drape next to each other. Is your skin appearing more natural looking next to this color or there? It's not too bad here, but I'm being drawn to all the redness in the face. So it's almost like my eyes are skipping the neck and then just going straight to the face. Because it's pulling the redness to the surface. Maybe a touch gray, but it's too hard to see. Whereas here, everything sort of is much more even between the coloration of the drape and then the neck and then the face. Here, it's sort of separate little areas. It's a very stern look. Can you see how your face looks kind of like strict and, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a little bit more open and warm. Okay, so that was true autumn and true winter. So I would say that with these two again, it was lesser, the sort of reddening effect and all of that, but it was definitely still visible that this one was discoloring, the true winter was discoloring your facial kind of the tone evenness more than true autumn. It's very possible that the true autumn is too warm in intensity, too much pigment or too muted, but it was still doing more evening overall and just a little bit more in harmony with you from just first appearance. So, ooh, pen's working again. Okay, so we're going to repeat that with true summer and true spring. Okay, so true summer and true spring. So here we've got two medium intensity sets again, but these are lighter. So these are lighter than the true winter and the true autumn were, but still not as light as the light seasons were. Do you remember they looked very much like milky colors, you know, like ice creamy sort of stuff?
Yeah,
definitely not as gray as the softs were or as bright as the brights were. Certainly not dark. So yeah, that's the cool set, that's the warm set, and in their intensity, they are really, really similar. Can you see? They're basically matching intensity, and it could be completely. A lot of the times when I get clients who end up being a true season, they have other true season clothes in their wardrobes from the opposite temperature, like this sort of way, because they matching the intensity, and that's already working for them really well. So yeah, and then sometimes there's just a bit of discoloration issue if they got the wrong temperature, but they're already getting like half of it right, so that's often workable for most people. But as soon as I pull them apart, like we did earlier, you can really see that, wow, these are really fruity, springy colors, and these are not, like they're very different types of temperatures. So let's compare them. Right. Okay. Okay. So we've got the spring one on top, very nice and even looking just as a first glance. That's the summer one, and we're seeing that sort of redness coming back, a little bit of that graying as well, like around the eye, just generally seeing a little bit of gray on the skin. The intensity feels good, can you see?
Yeah.
So the intensity feels like, oh, it's a friendly intensity, it's nothing strange, but if I'm comparing it back to this, here's where the skin becomes much more fresh looking. And can you turn your face slightly to the side? That's it. So we can do a sort of skin tone evenness test. So we look at the neck color or the skin color next to the drape to see that relationship, very nice relationship. Here we get that slight graying effect next to this. And then let's put this back and we just look at the sort of evenness from, like, say, the temples, down the cheeks, down to the chin, just to kind of see how smoothly evening the skin this color is versus that. But yeah, here this area gets inflamed immediately. Here we definitely see more redness. Definitely that kind of pops to the foreground a lot more. And that stern look again, right? You know, that's sort of like, you're really sort of like almost like a mean look, you know, the mean girl look, you know. This one feels so warm. You know, they're just so kind of friendly.
It's nice.
Yeah, very lovely. Let's check the greens. Okay. Okay, so this is the warmer one on the top again. That's the spring drape. That's the summer one, same story. We get the graying around the eyes, also around the chin as well. Can you see it's starting to sort of cast as like almost like a gray type of feathery effect. The redness here. And then suddenly it just sort of clears up much nicer. Back to the graying, a little bit of redness. And just more luminous looking here, right? Can you just turn your face slightly? That's it. Because from this angle we see a large sort of sample of skin all the way from the neck, up the jawline, the cheekbones, basically all the way up to the temple, the nose. So it's just kind of easy to see the transition from different areas of your face and how even the skin tone appears. So imagine if you were doing like, say, a concealer, say you're a makeup artist, and here's your model, and you're just checking her face like, okay, let me see what I need to prep with this face. Now imagine if this is what she's wearing when you're checking her face and you're looking at all these areas, versus imagine if she was wearing this. You're thinking, oh, okay, so it feels like a lot less job to do here, right? Like in terms of trying to even the skin. Whereas here, she'll be putting quite a lot more to sort of get it all even. You get a little bit more tired here under the eyes as well. And then just kind of, this one has a sort of like a bit more lifting kind of look just overall. Can you see all that?
Yeah, I can really see it.
Okay, well, I'm expecting this to be the case with the blues as well, but let's just double check. So the blues of the spring are really kind of nice and turquoisey, and the blues of the summer are very much back into that sort of, oh, I'm not quite sure. It's not quite cornflower, but that type of blue, isn't it? Like a nice, yeah, almost like inky color. Okay. That's the spring one. No. So as soon as we get into the blues, we really are seeing that, okay, you know, there's all kinds of disconnect going on. So we get the redness, we get this weird relationship between you and the drape. Can you see, like, it's almost like a completely different category thing than up here. Can you see it's just like, oh, what's going on here, right? But then here is like, okay, yeah, okay, they're speaking the same language, right? A lot more, you know? Whereas this one is like, I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're saying, you know? Like your face is going, huh?
Yeah, it really doesn't match.
No, doesn't really want to work together. Whereas here we can just see it kind of evening the skin. Of course, that's very important because that's basically how we check that there's no optical illusions kind of lingering around from leftover, you know, reflections. Here we get the redness, you know, attention going to all these bits, the stern look, you know. But now we're getting a sort of head separate, you know, and then there's the drape, you know, like there's definitely almost like a cut. And then just look how warm you appear compared to this drape. Can you see? It's just like, oh, I don't know if I have anything in common with you. I'm really sorry. Whereas he's like,
I like this one.
Yeah, works much nicer. Okay, so I feel like with the true summer and true spring pair, it was even easier to see the temperature differences than with the autumn and the winter set. So that's again another indication, to be honest, that all the way through we've been finding the warm one being better than the cool one. The only time when it was very difficult to reconcile what we've been seeing was in the soft pairing, do you remember?
Yeah.
So it's very possible that either that pair there is just really off, like maybe the colors are too gray and therefore they just can't really pull their weight, you know, even if it's a good temperature. So that could be the reason why. Yeah, I'm guessing that's possibly why that was the hardest to reconcile, because let's say if you need a lot of pigment, then the grayer the color is, technically the worse it will be. So even if, let's say, you end up something warm toned, but if the color is not really present, then you need a lot of color, then it doesn't matter if it's warm toned, it will still be struggling to give you what you need, you know. Okay, so that was the spring one. Summer one. So we said the true summer was doing a bit of redness and the true spring was the better one. So basically we get to a point where we've seen everything now, like we've basically seen it at least once, every type of category when we compare them to each other. So this is basically the part of the consultation where we are going to create a strategy based on our current findings to figure out like how we're going to do the next steps. So what we found so far is that the cooler tones were always pulling a lot more red, different amounts dependent on what we were comparing, what intensities, but ultimately they were always feeling just a little bit more disjointed, disconnected. So that leaves us with the warm categories, the autumn and the spring. My instinct says that the autumn categories are possibly a little bit too muted because they were always harder to give us, you know, information, and I don't know if, like, just from my memory, it feels like they have been not quite as radiant and glowing as some of the spring options that we've seen. So my thinking is going, I think we're heading towards spring, one of the springs. So how I would go from here is I would probably compare over this way, you know, so the difference between spring and autumn is their color, is their amount of color, right? The colorfulness. Yeah. So I would probably want to compare something like dark autumn, if the pen drew. I definitely need a new pen. I think I'm gonna have to get a new pen after this. So imagine this line going here. But dark autumn basically and bright spring, they both have a touch of winter added to them. So they're not true seasons because they're a little bit more in the neutral category because winter is influencing both of them. So they're both warm neutral, they both influenced a little bit by winter, so they both have a little bit of that crispness, sharpness to them, but of course not quite as much as actual winter. But comparing the two would be very useful because we'd be comparing them basically just on how pigmented one is, you know, how colorful or bright versus how muted it is. Same with true autumn to true spring, and then soft autumn to light spring. So I'm thinking this is the best way to test between autumn and spring, is to compare them on their corresponding levels, because light spring and soft autumn are both lightened by summer, and then the trues are just standalone, you know, so they're easy to compare. So yeah, I think we should do that next. And let's say that we do find that spring is better, then if we get to that stage when we're just left with the three springs, then it will be a matter of comparing them to each other to figure out which intensity and temperature from within that range that we like the most.